Holiday. What is the good word?
I'm ready to roll. I'm excited to get to be here with you. For those of you that aren't familiar, Harry Spate here is a sales master. He is also a author of Selling with Dignity. I've spent a lot of time with him in some amazing conversations over the last, since August. So it's been quite some time. And I feel like even in the first couple conversations with Harry, I learned so much. So I was excited to really dive into some of these things that you talk about in your book, but overall, just a conversation about sales, because you are a sales master. I'm, of course, in sales, but I'm also in marketing as well. So I'm excited to dive into everything that we have to talk about here today and kind of break the barriers apart a bit and talk about maybe some things that some people are afraid to talk about in the industry, or maybe are uncomfortable about talking about in the industry as well.
Yeah, this sounds great. Stephen, I love the conversation. Thanks for the kind words. The check will be in the mail for all those kind words and any future kind words that you say.
You have my...
The idea of sales and marketing, it cracks me up because years ago, I used to be anti-marketing, right? Sales, we were like the Marines. Marketing, they were like behind the palace, the marble palace or whatever, and it was just beautiful. They could come up with these ideas, and we in sales is like, that doesn't work. You got to get out and meet people. You got to go press the flesh. And today I've learned that sales and marketing are way better when they're combined, working together as a team.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm happy to have this conversation, and it's unscripted. So what are we talking about?
It is unscripted. Well, I'll tell you one thing that really intrigues me with all of your experience in sales, but the thing that intrigues me the most is you referenced that when you got into sales that you wore in basically like a bullpen, like, Wolf of Wall Street. So my first question is one, did you get to meet Jordan Belfort?
But no, I didn't meet anyone famous, but I definitely understand what a sales bullpen is like. That's
good. Sure. So my question is, I feel like, because I had a similar background, right? When I remember my first sales job ever, it was in a similar arena, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, but I sold like vacation. Timeshares. But I want to hear from you, like, what was that like? Is that originally what you had intended in going into? No,
not at all. It's funny because I was doing my mission thing in the Dominican Republic, cruising around on a motorcycle and living the life, irresponsible, just trying to help serve people. And money wasn't really a thing for me back then, but it became a thing pretty quickly because my wife mentioned something about having children. So I immediately panicked. I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to earn money? So people knew me, said, you'd be good in sales. And I thought sales was going to be very much like the book I read, which was The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino, written in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. He's a disciple of Napoleon Hill, so the roots go way back. But the thing about that was, it was almost like sales was going to be this act of love, right? So I was going to greet each day with love in my heart, which is one of the scrolls. I'll persist until I succeed. Then I'm thinking of all these visions of me with a big house and, I had money for the first time in my life and all this. And then I get into the sales bullpen and I'm looking out the window, scrunched up against someone else. I'm not only embarrassed about the calls that I'm making, I got to listen to that person make their calls and breathe and smell their coffee. And it's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But I was committed and made the best of it, to say the least.
Yeah, that's definitely. My question is, with being in that bullpen, are you allowed to tell me tell the people watching what you were selling back then?
Yeah, I mean, so I worked for a company that sold office equipment, copiers and printers and things along those lines. And it wasn't 100% in the bullpen, because we got to go out, but you definitely had to make calls in front of other people. And in the first few months, I didn't really have any appointments. So it was a brand new product to the market. I didn't have any current accounts to call on, and it was just cold. And so I didn't understand any of this, right? I just thought, You call people, you just get meetings, you go have a bunch of meetings. If I got an appointment in a week, I felt like I was accomplishing something after I realized how difficult it was, right? People, surprisingly, didn't, even back in the 90s, didn't really want to see salespeople too often.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think a lot of people in the industry now, even in sales, and I just hear the rumblings from, colleagues of mine, getting a meeting a week out of cold calling is still, it's something that's exciting, especially in today. And the times and how far everything has advanced. At least you knew that you were in sales. I'll tell you, when I think back to that sales position I had, I at the time didn't even know that that was sales. I just was dialing, like it was an auto dialer, and it would call for 8 hours straight. Just call, one click, call, one click. And
so you didn't know who you were calling, right?
I had no idea. It would pop up on the screen. It would have their name. But I don't remember ever having anxiety about that, or like being nervous about picking up the phone to call. I just remember like that was the job and that's what you did. And when I look back on that, I'm like, wow, that was actually a like good experience. I'm 34 now.
Wow.
So quite some time. I think what's awesome as well is that being in an arena, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen Wolf of Wall Street, right? They've seen these different sales movies. Like we have the overall scope of what it's like being in that work setting. And I'm sure that there's people watching that maybe have been or are in a similar setting where you're sitting neck to neck with somebody, you're dialing, you're on the phones, it's high pressure. So I think to look at the book that you wrote, right? Selling with Dignity, and looking at the pieces that you discussed, like serving and listening and persistence and empathy and patience and taking care of your client, is huge, because of the fact that probably within that arena that you were in back then, I'd imagine was high pressure, hard sell, right? Or am I incorrect?
Well, it wasn't really a hard sell, but there was pressure. Not throwing anyone under the bus, but I mean, owners of companies want salespeople to produce. They don't want to just pay for them. It's not like they just want to give jobs to salespeople. There should be an ROI that the salesperson is going to produce. So in our scenario, we had the whiteboards on each end of the office with their names and the revenue that we were generating. And mine was pathetically low. It was a goose egg. But every month, every day, it's like every day I was seeing nothing next to my name, which is not a great feeling. So there's that kind of pressure. Even though they were patient, it wasn't like I felt they were patient, because I put pressure on myself. The board with numbers and other people producing also puts pressure on one to perform. Yes. So you're just in a pressure-packed environment. But a lot of good comes out of that, right?
I agree.
Right? You get thicker skin. You realize, what you need to do. There's no mystery. There's no confusion that you're supposed to get in front of people, get appointments, but there was no pressure to sell per se. Like you had to lay guilt trips on people and, do these weird things like some industries that I'm just not, they're not for me, where you just have to lay guilt and put pressure on the buyer. That's not what I think is really selling.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I know that previously in a sales role, this is when I first started with marketing. We did this for 5 years. What we actually used to do is right after we would have a meeting, because I would teach and educate and everything, and then there was sales involved. What we would do though is, let's say we sold like 3 or 4. We would have a group chat and we would send it like 3 packages, and then like we'd be able to keep track of like what our colleagues were doing, and it was competition in a way, and it was pressure, because if throughout the month you looked at those numbers and you saw that you weren't performing as well, it pushed you to perform. And I think that type of pressure is positive pressure, right? I like that, because I'm the kind of person where it keeps me motivated. But also, I think that just like you, I'm also self-motivated, because at the end of the day, we all want to make money, right?
Right.
What do you think was your turning point in the industry because I said you had mentioned that you weren't performing the way that you wanted to be in the very beginning. So what changed? Like, what was the aha moment where you were like, let me fix this?
Well, when you're not when you're not familiar with what's going on around you, you're just doing the stuff. You really don't understand that you're building a funnel to some degree, that you're establishing relationships. So in my particular situation, I was establishing relationships with other salespeople in the office, and I was likable, which brings a ton of value for the role that I was given, which was I was being viewed as a consultant in this industry because of the new technology that was coming on board at the time, even though I had zero knowledge of that technology, none, right? So I had to read like a madman. But all throughout the process, I was building this thing with teamwork and showing interest in other people. And then they started in turn to hand leads to me as potential prospects for people that they could not, for product that they could not really sell, because it was a long sales cycle in an industry that was really a fast turnaround, right? The sales cycle was in and out within 30 days is really what the goal was. So mine was like 6 to 12 months, which I didn't understand at the time. It was like, I thought it was supposed to be like, you're interested today, you'll buy tomorrow. But no, there's tons. It's consultative, lots of back and forth. But the turning point for me, to answer your question, was I was building as I was going. And then when I realized that I was in such a competitive market, I started to talk to myself negatively. How am I going to compete against these people that have been doing this for years? They've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. I've been doing this for 10 weeks. Yeah. How am I going to compete? And the answer came to me and says, well, look, I'll outserve everybody. I may not know the technology, but I do know how to serve people. And that's what I did, is like I became like the best customer service minded salesperson that I could possibly imagine being. So, throughout time, buyers would say to me, what are you doing here after the sale? That never happens. Or why are you calling me on a Friday afternoon and not playing golf? What's wrong with you? So they're picking up things that other salespeople just didn't do, which was make calls on Friday afternoon or show up post sale and make sure that they were happy with the stuff that they acquired, so that, you're building this trust and relationship, getting referrals and, people buying again. So a lot of what I learned came from the mission background, right? Showing genuine interest in people, that it wasn't just about the sales. So I had a whole different background that really helped me differentiate. How's that for a long-winded answer?
No, that was not long-winded at all. I think that that's an amazing answer. Like I was saying to you, I think it's always important to look at your background and where you came from, right? Because it attributes to who you are as a salesperson. Because a lot of sales isn't just selling the service or the product or whatever it is in front of you. It's also about selling yourself too. Right. Yeah. And that comes back to that relationship building, how our personalities and who we are attribute to how we work within the sales arena. Right. And one of the things that I've always had tremendous respect for you on was the methodology of not hard selling and not putting, your elbow into somebody's chest to get them to purchase something. Right. Because when I got into sales, not the first sales job when I was 18, but when I actually got deeper into it and business development, I feel like one thing that was always put on me was to hard sell, right? If that person walks out of the room, you chase after them. If they say no, you continuously pressure and say yes. And to some degree, some people need a little bit of elbow grease to get them over the line. And, being in sales, I understand that. I think we all do. But one thing that I've always stayed true to was not hard pressuring, not, putting my elbow into their chest to get them to purchase. And I think that that's something that you and I agree on highly, right?
Yeah,
I don't
it's
like
all
to be
about
hard sold.
No. In fact, there's plenty of people have said, smarter than me, nobody likes to be sold, but they do like to buy. Right? People like to buy, but they don't like to be sold. Right? So we can make an offer, we can ask what a good next step is, and I feel very good about that. But There are people when I was selling more would go hang out in someone's office or in the lobby, just waiting for them to see if they'd see them to sign paperwork and so forth. So that was tacitly encouraged. I don't think I've ever done that myself. I mean, I can't think of any time where I went unannounced, hung out in someone's lobby to see if they would come out and sign paperwork. But I had sales reps that did that. I just couldn't do it myself, but that was what they did, and God bless them.
Yeah.
Not for me though.
So do you find in, everything that you do, because you offer these classes, right? You have your sales boot camp. Do you find that a lot, and I apologize if I put you on the spot when I ask this.
No, it's all good.
But do you find that a lot of sales directors and in that position where they're in charge hard sell to like they want their reps to hard sell, or they're stuck in that belief that it gets the job done?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the industry is, but I think the vast majority of people recognize that you're not going to push people into a consultative sale. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that have, I mean, a number of people that are selling a product that is, there's so much need, they don't care if they churn and burn through people. But if in a consultative sale, it takes a while to get to the process of where the person is ready to buy and they feel like you're the guy or the gal, but they might be delayed. I mean, things come up in business and they say, you know what, something else is taking a priority. And if we lay a guilt trip on them and say, well, I forecasted you, or, you're on my forecast for this month, you said you're going to do it, and now you're not doing it. I mean, you can't have those types of conversations because the person, it's not about us. Once they sense it's about us, that's when they say, you know what, I'm going to go a different direction now. Yeah. I'll call you when I'm interested. And when you hear things like that, that's never a good sign.
No, absolutely not. I agree with that. What methods do you think in a salesperson and in a sales role work the best that have stood the test of time?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite move the sale process forward, I learned years and years ago, is just that you just want to keep moving the process forward, right? So
I just talked about this with my colleague, literally on a podcast that I did earlier this week. He said the same exact thing.
Yeah. Okay. So what does that mean to you?
So when he explained it, which I loved it, he had told me he had a sales coach and a sales leader who basically had told him, stop looking at the next step as the contract and the signature, right? And the closing of the deal. Yeah. Look at the next step as a first step. I'm looking at getting them on a call, right? And don't look beyond that. Okay, now I've got them on a call, or I set up a meeting or a consultation. All right, accomplish that. Next step is review, or whatever the next step may be. Mm-hmm. And just to take it patiently, right? And I thought that was awesome advice.
It is. It's like the best advice. So there's a great book out there by James Muir, M-U-I-R. It's called The Perfect Close. And if you Google the perfect close, you're going to find out what the perfect close is. But it's really politely asking for the next step. Mm-hmm. So at this point, most people would like to do this. How does that sound like as a good next step? And people say either yes or no. Yeah. And so if it's yes, you've got the next step. If it's no, then you can ask simply, what would you say is a good next step? Because they'll say things like, where do we go from here? Right? And they keep it more vague. When you do that, you'll find that people will say things like, I don't know. And then you're kind of stuck when they say, I don't know. So I like the idea of typically at this point, many will choose to do this as a next step, right? It might be review a proposal, do a technology demonstration, look for references, something, whatever it is. And if they say yes, you're golden. And if they say no, you're still golden, because you're just going to ask them, what comes to mind for you as a good next step? Yeah. And so and the whole thing is like, can you get a meeting for the next step? So if, like in your case, selling marketing and websites and, all the things that companies need, they don't necessarily have the same timeline as you and I have.
Yes.
Right? Because you're selling it. Your timeline is like, I'd like to get this done in 30 days, or sooner the better. Maybe 60, maybe 90, but you want an end where, people buy. That's true. Anyone in sales, that's a good thing. But the buyer does not necessarily have the same time frame. And what they frequently will say, Stephen, is, I want to get this done as soon as possible. So we think of that means like today, or maybe this week, or maybe this month, right? So we're saying, oh, we got to act fast. But the thing to ask is, when I hear as soon as possible, I have certain thoughts that come to my mind. When you say as soon as possible, what's coming to your mind? So now you're getting, it's like, oh, well, sometime this year or over the next quarter or something, right? We have a need, doesn't mean we're going to act quickly on it. And so there's a lot of hoop jumping that salespeople will do. Is like, I've got a live one. They said they need it as soon as possible. I've got to get everybody involved. We're going to do this proposal. And then they go dark. And it's like, I thought they said as soon as possible. Well, did you ask what soon as possible meant to them? And did you get a meeting scheduled? Or did you say, I'll get back to you to get all my stuff. I'll get back to you in a few days. How does that sound? They say, good. See ya. Try finding them again, right? So don't leave the meeting without scheduling another meeting, even if it's to just see where you are a month from now. It's like, give me 30 days. It's like, can we pencil something in so we don't forget, and we can just have a conversation and see where you are. And that way I'll know what to do with you, what to do as far as serving you and providing value for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I really, really like that, especially the point that you made about asking questions, right? Yeah. I feel like in sales that a lot of people forget to ask the questions to build those relationships.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that I'm guilty of, even at times. I forget. And then after the meeting, I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have asked this. I wish I would have. It's always after, right? When you're laying down and you're out of breath and you're like, I should have. So one thing that
that's a great trait, by the way, right? Because you're looking at improving and being better. And there are people out there that don't care about being better, right? So when you're at this point where you say, I want to be better, it means I can serve my clients better. That is a great trait. More should be like that.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to you, right? You know, earlier when you were telling the story about working in that bullpen, you said, you know, in that beginning stage, I wasn't performing the way I wanted to perform. And I realized what I needed to change, right? You could have just thrown in the towel and said, I'm just done with this. I don't want to work with Jordan Belfort anymore. I need to get out the door. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to get back on my motorcycle and go across the country, whatever it may be. But you took it as an opportunity to turn it into an opportunity, essentially, to put it simply, and to take it and then grow and learn and challenge yourself. And that's something that I always respect out of people, because over the years, and I'm sure you've seen it often, people are so quick to give up if they don't understand something, or if they don't agree with something, or if, maybe coworkers or bosses and their employees don't have the same opinion. And they're so quick to throw in the towel instead of saying, okay, well, what can I learn from this? Right.
Yeah.
And I know that in sales, especially, even myself in the very beginning, 6 years ago, when I got into marketing, business development in this arena, I remember someone sat me down and they said, you are not coachable right now. And I couldn't argue it, because maybe I wasn't at the time, right? Yeah. I didn't have a lot of experience. I was new to this world, and it was a lot of pressure on me and people counting on me to show. I really had to prove myself, right? And from that point, I really took what I had and I said, all right, let me dive into this and really change the way I approach work and how I approach sales. And it changed my whole mind. That one little conversation of that person saying to me, you're not coachable, changed everything for me. I love pressure. I hate it and I love it. It's a double-edged sword. And you've been in sales, so I'm sure you're the same in an aspect.
Well, there's a person I know who is a professional speaker, and he does very, very well. And he's at the point of his career where you wouldn't think he needed anything. And someone gave him a suggestion recently, and he talked about it, and he said, I could do that better. Right. So no matter how many years this person, it's decades of professional speaking, someone picked up on something and said, what would really be great? However, they approached it. Yeah. And then the person was humble enough to take it. And then it's like, this makes a whole different experience for the audience when you do that. So you're talking about the questions. Like, so this is the typical situation. If someone says, Stephen, we need a new website. What's a website cost? And you say, well, there's a lot of variables. I can do a proposal for you. And they typically go from, I hear of a problem, I have the solution, So the next step is for me to give a proposal, go right from problem to solve it without digging, like you mentioned, asking the questions. What led them here? Get the story, get the backstory as to where they are today, get the pain that they went through, because then when you do all of that and find out what their goals are and how they want that pain to go away, you can ask a simple question: how long do you want to live with it? Right. So if they, they're building in the urgency versus you saying, I got this special this month that's going to save you whatever. And we don't really know what the pain is. People, I saw this great quote the other day. People don't care as much about missing out on an opportunity as they care about making a mistake. So it's better to miss out on an opportunity in most people's eyes, mine included, than to make a mistake that potentially could cost. I mean, in a website, it's not just the cost of the website, it's the lost revenue that the website doesn't produce.
Of course.
So people, like, you must come across this all the time. I come across it regularly, and I don't even do websites. People say, well, I'm looking for a website for $2,000. Well, what's your goal? It's like, well, I don't know. We want a nice website. I used to be that way. But you want your revenue, you want your website to help drive revenue. And I don't know if everyone understands that. I'm pretty sure they don't, right? So then they look at, it's like, well, I got this one for $2,000, this one for $5,000, this one's for $7,000. I'm going to go with 2 because I can't differentiate what the difference is.
Yeah.
And this is where a good salesperson puts on their consultant hat and has the conversation, right? So we slow it down and we have to go back and politely, right? Because we can't insult. Well, a lot of people think they know everything. I mean, that's just the way it is. They find something on Google or AI, gets the answer, and they say, well, I want this. And we just have to politely, respectfully ask to understand, just so I can be a better resource, right? We throw ourselves on the mat, so to speak, so that I can be a better resource for you. Help me understand what led you down this path, why this, and if you don't mind me asking, what would be some of the goals that you're looking for, right? And now you're starting to develop the trust. They open up. Now it's casual, and you're having a conversation. Now you're getting to the meat of what needs to be done. So now when there's a cost differentiation, there's $2,000, $5,000, or whatever the number is, you can go back to, remember, I may have missed this, but we talked about driving revenue. And this is one of the things that we have all of these case studies that talks about how our websites are doing just that. That is not what you really want, right? So the difference, the gap, their sales is going to more than make up for that gap.
100%, 100%. And then to your point that you were making about a lot of people, they maybe don't understand the internals of the website, right? And a lot of people don't. They just don't know what they don't know. And that's why in the role, in my role anyway, it's consultative because we're looking at these things. But I used to see this quite a bit, especially in Miami. Right? Because Miami's all flashy lights, it's glitz, it's glam. Yeah. Everybody always focused on what does the website look like and is it flashy? And they never looked at the internals. And that separated those people from the people that were actually gaining business who maybe didn't have as flashy of a website. Right. And that's where digital marketing really ties into this, because you could look amazing on the outside. Everything can be awesome. You could have a great product in front of you or a service in front of you, and it could all look perfect. But if the internal workings of what you're offering are not there, you are going to run into those roadblocks as people work their way through the sales process, right? And there's so many of them that, we won't get into, but there's a lot of pieces. It's like the internals of a clock, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And this is where, people in sales, they need to be educated, right? When we talk about providing value, are you becoming the go-to person so that people can say, I'm going to follow Stephen Halliday because he shares insight that helps me to understand what the heck I'm doing with my marketing. And when I need Stephen, he's the guy, right? I've already built up the trust and the following. So I think, on the sales side of things, this is where people in sales have to look at, it's beyond selling and asking for the order. You really want to build a community of people that are looking to you as the quote unquote expert that can get them what they want when they need it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's typically it's a huge missed opportunity on the sales side.
Major. And I don't think a lot of people always recognize it, right? And that comes back to our point of always progressing, always trying to be better. Sometimes you need to look in the mirror and you need to say, okay, I'm not performing the way I want to perform. That mirror is a great thing. I think that I've had my best moments. And the thing about it is it's not to shame yourself or to put yourself down, right? My whole thing is when I lay down at the end of the day, and I know that maybe I wasn't where I wanted to be, or maybe I forgot to do this, or I didn't perform too well at this, or I had a meeting that maybe went left and I should have said that, is the reflection on it. And the fact that I'm reflecting on it means that tomorrow I can adjust and keep it moving, right? So reflecting and moving forward, I think is so important in a salesperson's mentality, because we're constantly going in our minds, because we want to reach quotas. We want to hit numbers. We want to make money. We want to develop relationships, right? And there's pressure that's involved in that.
Absolutely. And business owners really should understand that there are slow times of the year. I know nobody likes this excuse, but if you look up right now, is it a challenging time for buyers? You're going to see there's uncertainty in the market. Some people are delaying decisions. It's okay as long as you don't do nothing, right? You cannot just do nothing. You still should be striving to have conversations, still be striving to find the people that are buying, but understanding that some people are just going to delay their decision until there's more certainty for whatever reason, right? I mean, we can't get inside people's heads, but people will follow the market. Sometimes people follow politics, and they just want stability before they make a decision. It's our job to determine that, right? To make the offer, find out what a good next step is. And then if it's not now, we've got to go find other people. And this is the key, is that we've got to be busy prospecting, using our social media for prospecting, making calls, finding out people who used to have interest. There's a lot that can be done, but sitting around saying the market's slow or people aren't buying, that's not the answer, right? That's not going to help anybody, right?
No.
So doing this type of stuff and working on your skills, digging back into previous conversations you had, you're going to be surprised that you're going to find people that never made a decision, that are still interested, but they just held off and now they're ripe, right? They're ready to do something. And that's why we want to call on people that used to show interest and kind of drifted away.
Yeah, I think one of the awesome things about you, Harry, and when I say that you're a master of sales, I really do. It's not just to hype you up. I really do mean it, because over the years, I've worked with a lot of people within the sales industry, right? And I've met quite a bit of people who have given different recommendations on how to do this. And I've taken little pieces of it here and there. But I think one of the amazing qualities that you have is that you are relatable. You don't just come into a situation with someone in a sales role and say to them, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z, go do it. Because it's a lot of people that are director of sales or claim to be masters of sales, and maybe they are in their own right. That's the first thing that they do, right? They come in and they say, go do this and go do that and go do this and go do that. And then when nothing produces from it, they're wondering why. I just think that's an amazing quality, that you are able to sit down and you're able to say, okay, listen, you're not going to win every deal, right? Or not everybody's going to answer the phones, or you're not going to book as many meetings as you want this week, or you're going to have a challenge with this, and you're able to relate your experiences to that. And I think a lot of sales reps, people in business development, I think that they're missing that in the world, because I know when I'm online and I'm seeing other reps and people in sales dealing with the same pressures or having the same encounters or same struggles or challenges and even positive experiences, right? I always appreciate them so much more, because it is relatable, and it forms a mental relationship with them where then you're able to sit back and say, okay, it's not just me and there's this, does that make sense?
100%. It's like you can't say something that is at all not 100% people are buying today, the market's fine, and so forth, right? If I remember in Washington, D.C. years ago, 2009 hit, and there was something that the government did, which basically shut down all purchasing, which set the benchmark for everyone else. So people follow the government. So the government says, we're not buying anything because the market's tight. We're not going to overspend, which I find hard to believe. But anyway, they said something along those lines. And so companies, businesses followed suit. Mm-hmm. And so I got the team together and listened to their ideas, right? It's like we all knew. It wasn't like, oh, just ignore what's going on. I mean, you had to make adjustments and say, what are we going to do? How do we proceed? Mm-hmm. And they all came up with how we were going to proceed in spite of an economic downturn. And the team crushed it, right? The only thing I can take credit for is I painted the walls yellow because I wanted a brighter office. But other than that, it was them, right? They came up with it and said, we're going to do it. And they went on to have a great year in spite of what the news was around us. So there's a lot of creativity in people when you're honest with them, treat them like adults, right? And let them have their ideas and don't, degrade the idea because every idea is a good idea. Yeah. You don't have to put it into practice, but you say, well, that gets the gears turning. What else? Who's got something else? Yeah. Right. So I think there's tons of value in people who are meeting people every day that you want to tap into that, where too many business owners say, no, I know it all. I don't want to hear what they've got because I've been there. I know it all. It's like you're missing years and years and years of people with emotional intelligence knowing what's out there in the market face to face. Why wouldn't you want to listen to that? Yeah. That would be my question. Of course. That's a big thing. Do you read, you read a lot, but do you read, do you like Tony Robbins? I do. Because it's interesting when you said about the economic downturn, he talks about how there's a difference between the person that is, maybe in an economic downturn and progressing, who looks at it as an opportunity, and the person who says, I'm in an economic downturn, it's all going downhill from here, I might as well just. Yeah. That's why I thought about that when you mentioned it. Well, one of the things I used to bring out was, okay, so there's no money, right? We keep hearing there's no money being spent. Back in the day when there were malls, I don't know if there still are, but I would drive by malls that were loaded with cars every weekend. Yeah, I think about this all the time. Yeah, it's like, okay, so no money, why, right? So somebody's buying in those malls and someone's delivering stuff to the stores, right? There's trucks moving, there's commerce happening. Why wouldn't it be the same in businesses? Because businesses are running, right? There's manufacturing going on. There's the services industry. Those people need the stuff we're selling. So if their customers are buying, that means money's moving. We want to be part of that money moving. Yeah. You sound like me when I go to the grocery store on Sunday and I'm stuck in a backed up line. And I'm like, there's no money. Why am I standing here for 20? Exactly. A lot of people feel this way too. Yeah. Which is so interesting. There may be an agenda out there, but we won't get into that. So let me ask you this, in all these years, how do you feel like sales methodology has evolved? Because there are so many tactics now, right? We talked earlier just for a second about how, with sales, there's marketing, right? They both work together because it's that messaging to your consumer of who you are. And then there's that execution piece of it. So in terms of sales and different tactics, whether it be email marketing, mailers, flyers, face-to-face interaction, cold calling, what do you think has evolved to this time period that we're in now? And do you think it's more challenging, or do you think it's easier to be in sales today? And you can be completely honest. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's easier because of social media. I see what you mean. And the reason is that you can build a huge following on social media. If you have 10,000 people in your community that are watching your posts and you're becoming the go-to person, you have your own website. essentially. You have a following. I mean, years ago, this was not available when I got started. It was the people you knew or the people you called and people you spoke to, not this. So we have massive opportunities with press, with social media for like used to be the press in the old days. The second thing that is great is we just have to find out how people like to communicate. And so you try different things. Sometimes it's texting. Sometimes it's DMing on LinkedIn or Facebook, but we have all kinds of opportunities. Before it was like the phone or stop in somewhere. Now you can find a person on LinkedIn and comment on one of their posts, or you find them on Facebook, do the same thing, or Instagram. They're everywhere. So for people to go dark and us not to be able to find them, that's where you got to look in the mirror. So there's a lot of good that's changed. The negative thing is buyers are a lot smarter and they don't need us until the very end. Right? When they say, yes, I have a problem, I know what it is, and I know what I want, how much? For us to kind of go backwards and say, what brought you here is not always easy because they don't want to be delayed. And they already know the answer. So they don't want to say, Stephen, I already know all this. I don't need to go backwards. This is what I want. And do you guys, what's your price? I've already done my research. That's a little different from, back in the late 90s.
Least, right? Listen, I have that same mindset every week when I order pizza 2 times in a row because I won't admit that I have a problem. But once I put on 20 pounds and my waistband gets tight, I'll finally say, "Oh, all right, it's time to."
Yes, then you'll be looking up at all the diets that are available.
Yes, I think that I agree with you. At first when I asked you, I felt like in my head I was like, I don't think it's easier. But then as you explain it, and that's one of the great things is that when you speak with someone like yourself, even myself, is that even if you may have different viewpoints on things, you're able to line them up in certain ways. And one of my favorite things in 2025, and I don't know why I started doing this, was I started to love the idea that someone does not think like me. And someone doesn't have the same agreement on things as I do, but also is an expert in a category, right? And successful just because it allowed me to start learning more, right? And it allowed me to open up my mind as well. Because I'm sure, and it's something that I want to talk about here for a few minutes, when we look at different methods of sales over the years, like the ones that we mentioned, a big one that I think a lot of salespeople in this day and age have a love-hate relationship with is cold calling, right?
Yeah.
And there's always this debate. Is it successful? Is it not successful? Does it work? What is your take on this?
Yeah, my take is that it still works.
I agree with you on this.
Yeah. I mean, and the reason I say that is people still pick up the phone. They may not pick up the phone as much as they used to, but they do pick up the phone. And if you don't wreck the conversation, right? If you develop your skills and you have a decent conversation, there's opportunity there. If you walk into a business and you just say something polite to the receptionist and say, look, I know you're busy. You're not looking to talk to salespeople. I'm here real quickly to get the card of the person who makes the decisions regarding this. And then as they say something, you're saying, so how's your day going, right? Some people are great at the small talk. I want to get to the point quick, let them know that this is the reason why I'm here. I'm not going to blow up the place. I'm someone you can trust. And small talk while there's opportunity, right? You get to know the person and tell they're really friendly. Then you can call that person who you got the card. If they give out the card, then you call the person and say, I walked into your office today. You got a beautiful office, right? And you're respectful and you talk about how great the receptionist was.
Yeah.
If you go in and you're a jerk and you're just saying, decision maker, please, Gary, I want to talk to Gary, please. Who are you? Well, Gary knows me. And then you play these types of games. Yeah, I'm not into that, right? So does that work? Yeah, but it's not for me, right? Be consultative, be someone that people like, right? I mean, that's not that hard, right? Be someone that people like versus there's a jerk out front. I don't know if you want to come out and see him. She may not be able to buy, or he may not be able to buy the person who is quote unquote the gatekeeper, but they can certainly wreck you, right? And I just felt like, let's be likable to everybody. And I don't care about their political beliefs. I don't care what, their philosophies are. I'm going to be nice to people. Michael Jordan used to say Republicans buy sneakers too, right? So you don't have to be just half. You can be a regular human being and just be nice to people. And I think your cold calling, right, when you're respectful, will be successful. I would add in that it's not the only thing we do, right? Some people, that's like, if your job is completely cold calling, I got to say, that's not an easy gig.
No,
right? Let's be real. That's not an easy gig. But so how can you help that person as a business owner or a sales leader, help that person be rewarded other than just the check at the end of every couple of weeks? Can you get them out in the field? Can they visit some current accounts with other sales reps? Can you build a team spirit with these people so that they're just not constantly in the arena, so to speak? Yeah. What's your thought on all of that?
So I think I agree with you on cold calling. I think just like many other sales reps, it's something that nobody wants to admit because nobody likes it. Right. I think there may be some leeway in saying, I think it comes down to industry as well that you're in, but that loops back to the relationship part of it. Right. And building that connection with them and then making that call, or, there's different ins and outs to it. But I think one thing with sales reps that I've seen is we don't like to admit that cold calling works, and we don't like to do it. I cannot think of, maybe I can think of like one or two that like to do it. Right. And, it's, I haven't figured out yet mentally why it can be such a roadblock at times, because the worst thing that somebody is going to do is hang up the phone. But I just feel like every time you do it, it's literally like the first time. Right. And I think just as any salesperson, sometimes you look at a list and you're like, I do not want to call through this list. It's just who we are as people, right?
Yeah. I spoke to a fellow by the name of Jason Bay, B-E-Y, I believe is how you spell his last name. Bay. But if it's not E-Y, it's A-Y. He has such a great demeanor. I mean, he's the cold calling machine.
Yeah.
And so when you listen to him, it's so chill
and relaxed.
Hey, Steven, how's it going today? Reason for my call is right. It's like, he says, I know you're not expecting my call. We do have 30 seconds. So I can tell you why I'm calling, and we go from there. If it's great, not, we'll part as friends. Right? Permission based.
I love
super chill. He's got like the breathing thing down. I'm like, dude, you are so chill. And he said it's muscle memory. It's like you do something for a long time, it's just muscle memory. It just kicks in.
It's to it.
Yeah. You're just having a conversation. So yeah, if anyone's struggling with that, I look for that guy on his podcasts or his services, but he's one of them. There's some that are just really amazing. He's one of them.
Yeah, I see one, this one woman on TikTok quite a bit. She's one of my favorite ones to watch, and she's very motivating in the way that she does it. One thing that she does is when she reaches out, the first thing that she says is, listen to me, this is a cold call. And she then says, I just need 10 seconds. If you decide within this 10 seconds you don't want to speak to me, you can hang up the phone. And she gets, and I even did research on this within Reddit over the past couple months, just to kind of see, like, does anybody else do this? And there's not a lot that do. So one thing about it is that it is different from what other reps are doing, because we all hate a spam call, right? But one thing that I saw was that people that were doing it said that the people that they were connecting with were more likely to have a conversation with them because they respected right off the bat that they said to them, this is a cold call. You can click, you can stay. Give me 10 seconds. And that 10 seconds turned into 20, and then that 20 turned into 30. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. So I did give it a try. And I also gave it a try in email too. I think I got maybe like 3 of the people responding on the email. Yeah. I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Again, trying different things. It's like you're testing the market.
Yeah.
Right. If you keep doing the same old, you're not learning. You're not seeing if the market's adjusted. But if you run the data and you say, look, I'm going to try a week of, I'm going to call with this 10-second approach and look at my numbers compared to the week before, that may give it to you. But if you do it for a month, 90 days, right? I heard someone say, don't try anything on social media that you're not going to stick with for 90 days. I'm like, oh my goodness. I never stick with something for like a couple of hours. So yeah, see, so this is how you get the data, right? Though is that you test the market, you prove, and you retry and so forth. Yeah, I got to hand it to people that are very creative, try different things, and it works. Why not give that a try? So good for you.
Even when it's scary. And I think that scary and that uncomfortable feeling is a part of the growth, right? A sales rep or business development, whatever industry you're in. I think in one way that I myself got very lucky in the industry is that, when I got into everything hardcore 5-6 years ago, part of the role was public speaking.
Yeah.
And and you may not know it, but I'm partially an introvert. Like I on the outside come off as an extrovert. I can walk into a room. I have no problem doing it when I need to do it. I can turn it on and turn it off. But when I get home, I'm so socially drained where I need to shut off. But my point is, so I had to public speak for the first time in front of groups of people, 20, 30, 100 people in the very beginning. And I would walk into a room and my body would just shut down. And my bosses and my colleagues were like, you have to do it. Like, do you want to work? Do you not want to work? Because if not, we'll find somebody else. And I was in the Shark Tank and I just kept doing it over and over and over and over. And it just lended to overcoming that fear and that growth. And, by the end of things, before that company and that department, the department had shut down, I was one of the best public speakers that was there. And my, I was going to say audience, like I'm on a talk show. My audience or my classes, I had a lot of rapport with them. And I keep all the surveys, because I love to look back at them and just see all the compliments.
Yeah, that's right. That's great. Yeah. So it's really, it's putting yourself, getting out of the comfort zone, right? And on the other side of the pain is typically some great reward. So if you look at the progress that you've made and the positions where you are in life and so forth, staying status quo is not the answer, right? Keep pushing yourself and go through some pain, and it's good for your growth overall, and good things will happen.
Yeah, I agree.
It's good stuff.
It's amazing stuff. And, I'll say before we wrap everything up, I think one of the common themes when I was looking at reviews and testimonials of Selling with Dignity is that everybody had a similar opinion in terms of how awesome your mentorship and your support is, and how awesome you are with building relationships, and then your commitment to and approach to leadership, and how you are empathetic and positive and value over that profit as well. And I just have to give you so many kudos. And anybody that is listening that has not connected with Harry or has not read his book, you need to go and check it out. He is awesome at what he does, and he just has so much insight, and you'll learn something new. But for the people that are watching, before we close everything out, my question is, what is maybe one piece of advice that you had received from the second that you stepped into that bullpen to today that you would give to somebody that is starting in sales?
Yeah, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yeah. I mean, which is be the real you. Back in the day, we didn't have this be your authentic self. I didn't hear the word authentic, I don't think, unless I was talking about authentic Italian food. It was be yourself. And when you can be comfortable in your own skin and just talk to people as a regular human being, be yourself, fun, interesting, curious, that's going to go miles. So my sales manager told me that. I was like, what do you mean? I'm always myself. Apparently he saw that I wasn't. But once I got into it and I could laugh and not take this as life or death, it's just start having fun with people, and people want to buy with people that they're having fun with and so forth. So be real, right?
Be authentic,
be real.
Be authentic Italian and not franchise Italian.
Right, exactly. Not Franco-American, not canned.
Those unlimited breadsticks are great, but they're not authentic.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Good stuff. This has been a blast, Stephen.
It has. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that everybody enjoyed everything that we talked about. And stay tuned. We'll go live again together soon.
All right. Absolutely. It's been fun. We'll talk to you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Harry.
You bet.